Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where my goal is to use science and experience in training to make you a better lifter. Today we're going to take a look at how to water cut like a top-level powerlifter. Trying to make weight, or cut water weight rather, the goal is to make your weight class. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing this if the goal wasn't to make weight. And with these strategies, what I have found with a 2-hour weigh-in is you can cut up to 5 to 8% of your body weight pretty reliably with these methods. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to show you how to get the weight off, but getting water back in and fluids after weigh-ins is going to be critically important so that you're back up to weight by the time you hit the platform. And then the secondary goal is to be dehydrated for as little amount of time as possible, because the longer you are dehydrated, the more your muscles are going to be affected from that water cut for your performance. So the first step in this water cut that we're going to take a look at is actually water manipulation. This is what most people are going to think about whenever they think about a water cut. Now, where I see people go wrong, and inexperienced lifters or wrestlers, I see this a lot in high school, is people think that, oh, to cut water, I must have to not consume much water, right? And the thought process is simple. If you're not consuming water, all you're doing is peeing it out. The problem is that goes directly against the goal that we had a second ago, where we said we want to be dehydrated for as little amount of time as possible. And those people tend to cut water way too early, and then their performance suffers. Instead, we're going to take advantage of one of our body's natural responses to water intake. And that's essentially the idea that the more water that we put into our body, right, the more water that our body is going to flush out of the system. It releases a hormone, and a lot of you can probably relate to this, as it's simply the more you drink, the more you pee. So that brings us to the concept of a water load. Early in the week, right, usually starting 6 days out or so, you're going to really up your water intake. In some cases, you'll double it up to triple your normal day's water intake. And what this does is it gets that hormone flowing to make you have to go to the bathroom all the time. Now, the inverse of this is true, right? I could say less water in. So what those inexperienced lifters are doing is they're not putting water into their body. And for that reason, your body thinks to itself, oh no, I don't know when I'm going to get hydrated next, so I have to hold on to as much water as possible. So it's kind of counterproductive to cut water too early. Instead, we're loading to get our body used to flushing this water out. Then, what we can do is our body has a natural lag time where we can stop putting water in, right? So we cut it off, and usually this tapers. You know, for me, it might be starting 3 days out, you start to taper down that water load, and then 2 days out, you might be up to a third of where you started with this water load, and then your final day before competition, your intake is very low, maybe a sixth of where that water load started 6 days out. But what happens is your body's so used to flushing water through the system, even though your water in has gone down, you are still flushing that water through because your body's expecting that water to come into the system, so it keeps flushing out. And what we do is, by shutting off this intake, and about 12 hours before weigh-ins, you shut it completely off, right? Your body flushes everything out, and that way, on the day of weigh-ins, that's when you're at your lightest. And with this, you're only dehydrated for, 8 to 12 hours instead of multiple days. And the rest of the days, you are loading water in, so you are very hydrated in those instances. So now that we've gone over how we can cut our water and go through a water load to make weight, the next step is sodium manipulation. Now, if you're only cutting, 2 to 3 or maybe even 4% of your body weight, you can probably get there just through water manipulation. Step 2 is kind of for your more extreme cuts. We're going to manipulate sodium to flush even more water out of the system and get even more water weight off. So first, what I have to do, and I've explained this before in past videos, but I drew a cell, right? This represents a cell. And inside the cell, we have these things called solutes. The black dots here represent sodium, which is a solute within the cell. And then my blue dots represent H2O. So most of us can probably imagine that feeling of what it's like whenever you've consumed a lot of sodium and you're holding on to water weight. You feel bloated, right? This is from a phenomenon called osmotic pressure and a balance that your cells want to get. So basically, your cells want to be in balance on number of water molecules and the number of solutes within your cell. And that could be sodium, creatine, anything else. So if you watch, if I add sodium to my cell with these dots, that osmotic pressure is going to draw water in from the outside in order to balance those new solutes into the system. And what this does is it causes you to hold on to water weight, right? And if you're trying to cut water weight, this is counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. So what we can do here is manipulate the sodium in your system and how your body's holding on to the sodium. Because if we reduce solutes in the cell, right, the opposite's going to be true. Instead of drawing in water, then some of these water molecules will leave, and then you can flush those out through your water load. So sodium manipulation is very similar to water loading. We call it sodium loading. Essentially, the more sodium you take in, the more used to flushing sodium out your body gets. And the opposite's true. If you don't eat a ton of sodium, your body's going to hold on to all it can get, so the sodium out goes down. So just like the water cut, we're going to load sodium in the beginning, right? For me, it's usually 5 grams of sodium, 6 days out, 5 days out, 4 days out. And then, so that gets my body used to flushing these solutes out. And then at 3 days, switch it, right? So you take very low sodium, 1 gram or less, for the remaining 3 days of your cut. Your body's used to flushing the sodium, and what it does is it gets it out of your cells and you're not replenishing it. So it allows more water to leave the system, and then your water cut is that much more effective. Now, I have to note, if you do this, you have to be all the more cognizant after your weigh-ins to consume sodium and water to replenish not just the water you lost, but the electrolytes. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have cramping issues on game day. Preparing for a hard cut, you may also want to pay attention to your food weight. And this is physically the weight of the food that you consume in the couple days leading up to a meet. You want to consume dense calories. Once again, I see high school wrestlers do this all the time, novice lifters. They'll cut calories thinking that they can lose weight. And ultimately, 1 week out of competition, when you're going to be doing a cut like this, is not the time to be cutting calories, because you want to perform. So instead, you're going to eat dense calories. Candies, chocolate, nuts are great, because for the amount of food you're eating, you're getting your caloric intake to where it needs to be, and you'll have energy to perform. But at the same time, it's not heavy weight that's sitting inside your body for when you weigh in. My other note here is absolutely no fiber in the days leading up to a meet, because fiber is going to absorb water and hold that into your system. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want. So stay away from fruits and vegetables when consuming these calories. So those are my 3 steps to cutting weight like a high-level power lifter. The goals here, after you've gone through these processes, we want to make weight, rehydrate, and then most importantly, hit PRs. You'll notice, the last thing I'll say is I did not explain any ways to push water out of the system, right? All of this is passive water manipulation. So things like sauning and whatnot can be added on, but keep in mind that goal we had of being dehydrated for as little amount of time as possible, okay? I do not recommend these water cutting methods to everyone, especially novice lifters. It can add another variable to an already stressful meet day, but hopefully it helped. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Happy lifting.